This is The Gorge. It's a podcast where my friend Sara and I gorge ourselves on overanalyzing a topic. The Gorge is brought to you by Ko-fi and Patreon. Our Ko-fi is ko-fi.com/thegorge. And Sara, what are we talking about this week?
This week is Indie Week. Kind of early, but there are other bigger games that have to be finished first. And so we are talking about Faith Chapter 2 for just the PC, and we're talking about, it's actually funny, because Faith Chapter 2 is just for PC, and Worse Than Death is for literally fucking everything.
It's all over the place.
It's on everything. It's on PS4, it's on the Switch, it's on Xbox One, it's on Steam, it's on the Humble Shop, the Humble Bundle Shop, and if you want to get scared on the go, it's on the Apple App Store. That's
cool.
Right. That's right, people. You can play this game anywhere and get kind of scared.
It gets tense.
We'll talk about it in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But first, let's talk about the one that will probably take less time to discuss. Let's talk about Faith Chapter 2.
Yeah, so last year we played Faith Chapter 1 for Indie Week.
Yes.
As part of the collection of 3 horror games we played, and I still think Faith is one of the most impressive horror games I've ever played in the limited amount that I've played. And Faith Chapter 2 obviously continues that carries on exactly where Faith 1 left off. It's more of the same, but that's a good thing, I think, in this, because Faith was so original and unique the first time around, and it keeps that going.
It does basically what I would want, a Chapter 2 to do, which is, took the core concept and then did more with it.
You have back to that old DOS style, old game, those old crackly sounds that still freak me out.
Yes.
But there's a lot more. There's a bit more going on in the story. And you get those really, really good animations.
Oh man, I'm really glad. There's one of my complaints. I don't know if I even mentioned it in the podcast, but one of my complaints was Chapter 1 was that there were the animations are really good, but there weren't a lot of them. And then Chapter 2 was okay, here's a ton, have fun. They're all spooky, and they have an extremely sharp aesthetic, and they all are just the best kind of eerie, and I love every single one of them. I love so much about this one. I like this one actually way more than the first one, mostly because this one scared me harder in a few sequences. I know it's hard to say a DOS game is actually scary, but there's a few bits in this game that are actually kind of frightening, which is amazing for its aesthetic and its technological reach, I guess. I'm thinking of the bit when you're down in the sewers or whatever, the tunnels, I guess. And you only have the flashlight, and there's things coming at you, and you can only move your flashlight in cardinal directions because of the way movement works in old video games. And I love that because it's so, it makes your head hurt, and, you'll turn, and there'll be something there, and then you'll turn, and you'll have to deal with something else. When you turn back, it's gone. It's just, it's cheap, but it scares me every time. The creatures that are repelled by the light, and then you have to constantly keep them at bay and keep track of them. Yes.
This game, is great because it's based on DOS games. The thing that caught me up the most about that and really aided in building that tension and that drama is that the controls are just a little bit unresponsive.
Yes, just a bit wonky.
A twitch, a millisecond of lag before your inputs register, and so when you're trying to quickly turn around, you can't.
Right.
You can't just spin in a circle really quickly. You have to wait. You have to wait just a fraction of a second, and that's just enough to put you in a state of peril.
And it makes you feel like you can't respond. I mean, you literally can't, but you get the sense that you're out of your depth and you can't respond quickly enough to all of the horrible stuff happening around you. So it's really clever. I mean, there's there's a lot of genuinely unnerving imagery in this game. That uses an extremely limited color palette and very limited rendering style. But there's some, like, actually, like, spooky stuff that goes on in this game. When you get... Oh, God. It's weird, too, that, like, as soon as the music from Faith 1 kicked in, when you get to the forest, I was just like, oh, wow, nostalgia bomb. I've come to associate that song. And it's like a public domain. I don't know. I can't remember the name of the actual song. It's a classical music track. But I've come to associate, like, that song with Faith so much because of, like, how much we played it back in the day and how much other people have played it, how much other people have talked about it, that when I hear it now, it takes me right back to it. And so when I heard it in this game, I was just like, oh, shit, I'm back where we started. That's awesome. I love it. It's such a good detail.
That's so cool. And I love, I love the direct callback in that sequence because you're in the forest and it is very similar to the forest you spent in the first game and where you got lost. And I don't know if you felt it, but I was dreading Chupacabra or something.
Oh, I was afraid of Chupacabra. I saw the deer and I remember the deer ending from Faith from chapter 1 and I love that. I was like, yay, deer. But yeah, it was just kind of, you get like a sense of dread, like you're afraid of that little horrible skittery thing from chapter 1 to come at you again. And then you find the note, and the note is horrifying, and I love it. It's such a good change of pace from the first, because like all the notes in chapter 1 are, as far as I remember, I should have played it chapter 1 again to kind of refresh my memory, but I just didn't. I'm bad at doing my homework. And so, but all the notes in chapter 1 are fairly straightforward. They just relay information to the player. But so then you get that one note where it starts out kind of normal, like a news report about like 3 people murdered in the woods. Yeah. And then it slowly devolves into being like, and you killed them, didn't you, John? They were just drug addicts in the woods, and you stabbed out their eyes and you cut off their head, and it just starts going more and more batshit, and the music goes away and turns into just like noise, and there's an upside down cross with 666s, and it's just like this whole, it's such a good like little moment where you're like, oh god, yeah, they've definitely ramped up their ability to frighten you with limited tools. It's really impressive.
That adds to the ambiguity of the previous situation, like what a part of it is real, what part of it is projection of your character's like psyche, and then because it opens in that great sequence of you going through the house and then going to the basement to find Michael. Michael, to find him possessed and like completely taken over and asking to see his family, and like that was just like such a good moment to start the game with.
Yeah, who knew that you could have a DOS game start with a cold open? like in a movie, like your standard horror movie that starts with like a cold open to establish like the horror itself, and then you cut back to more mundanity of you like approaching the graveyard and stuff like that. It's like, oh, that's really good. That's actual. Those are just old-fashioned horror movie tropes being used in just a little old indie game. I really enjoyed a lot of the little simple things in this game. There's a lot more, like you said, ambiguity. The whole idea of just like what you've been doing and how much of this is all in your head, and just lots of like amazing little moments. The bit where if you keep walking behind the grates in the tunnels, you can find a note that someone says like, oh, well, nobody ever comes back here. And then you get a special kill, and it's like a guy running up and just stabbing the shit out of you. I don't know if you got that one. Okay.
That one got me.
That one got me super hard. It's so good, man.
I appreciate this series' abruptness with its quick kills. It's how quickly the entire game can turn on you and you just get mortis. Like just before you even have like a half second to process what's happening.
Yeah. Is it gauche to have custom text tones in 2019? Because I think having Mortis as my text tone would be really funny.
Oh, I would not be able to handle that. I would just immediately like freak out.
Yeah, especially if like I'm having text pop in like a lot. That probably would be really scary. Middle of the night, just waking up to something going Mortis, more over and over. Oh, it's horrible. Never mind. Change my mind. But yeah, there's so many, like, I just think of, because there isn't as much, like, depth to talk about, per se, although, I mean, like, there is more going on in the plot to this one than in, like, the first one, but the thing that sticks with me the most about Faith, both games now, is it has a really strong sense of imagery, despite that it's working within, like, the actual... it kind of flubs the limitations slightly. Like, there's no way an actual DOS game could do that many animations or that detailed animations.
That's the smoothness of the animations and stuff. Not a chance. No, that would never happen. But it still sticks to its guns pretty firmly, and it still manages. There's the tree in the forest that's like covered in gore. Or it looks like it's covered in gore, to my eyes anyways, at the very beginning of the game. Little things like that, you see it, and you know what it is, even though it's a very abstracted version of it. And it's like, oh, that's spooky. You did it. You can evoke, like, genuine spookiness with really, really simple. And honestly, the simplicity of it helps it, because your brain fills in, as always, your brain fills in the gaps. The best way to do horror is to not show the monster.
Never show the monster, yeah. And this game explicitly shows the monster, and because it uses such a lo-fi animation style, it still doesn't really show the monster.
No, I always think of the first Faith, and the probably the most dread I've ever had playing a horror game is because the game hypes up how distorted the creature's face is.
Yes.
And how you get that one animation where they pull down their hood.
Yes.
And I've never felt like a tension like that. Like,
yeah.
dreading what it's going to be. This one, the effect that got me the most, I think, was, I don't know what it's even called, but like when the colors started to desync in the church.
Oh. Yeah, like, that has a name, and if you hadn't asked me what it was, I could have told you. It's a chromatic aberration.
Yeah, that's it. Okay,
there
that's
we go.
It. Yeah.
Oh, I got it. I'm so good.
Where the reds kind of shift.
Yeah.
And like when you have like a monitor that's not displaying for, like, that was such a strong effect. I love glitch out effects like that.
Yeah, it's very trendy right now. Actually, chromatic aberration is kind of turning up everywhere, which I think is neat. It's a thing I read somewhere once, that the flaws of a medium become the thing that you're nostalgic for and become the telltale signs of that medium. And you get that, like, in video games, it's glitch art, because like modern video games don't really have, like, pixel glitching, obviously, because they're 3D model. They have their own kind of fucking weird glitches, but it's a different kind. And so the signs of that medium is like pixel glitching and stuff, and so it's an easy way to kind of evoke the sense of like playing a video game late at night and it screws up and for some reason it scares you, like your video game is haunted.
I've had a recurring, like when I was younger, I had a recurring nightmare of playing a game and turning it off and the screen would not go away on the TV.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, it's just because the CRT holds onto the image for a second. Yeah.
And that used to terrify me, the idea that like the game would not turn off, and like I would unplug it, I would unplug the TV and the image would still be there. And I guess just the unnaturalness of that is enough. And so like when you get these things that use like glitching or visual distortion, I guess the way I would say like what the horror for that comes from is the fact that like the it's breaking down the filter between you and the nightmare on the screen. Like,
yeah.
if the screen itself becomes unstable,
Yes.
like what is left to protect you?
Yeah, Eternal Darkness is the most famous example of destroy. And of course, in 2019, replaying Eternal Darkness, a lot of those scares don't work anymore because it uses like the old signs of like an analog TV. But
video input thing, the bright green input prompt in the top of the screen, all that
giant volume bar instead of like the more minimalist one that most TVs these days have. Those kind of things. It kind of loses some of the spook, but back in the day, that was extremely effective and very novel. Because again, like you said, you feel like it's breaking down the barrier between you and the game, and now the game is actually like reaching out and directly messing not with your character, but like with you as a human being. And then that lends itself to the sense of feeling unsafe, which is of course what all horror kind of like good horror aims for, the concept of making you feel unsafe, despite the fact that your like brain knows that you're in a safe situation. A horror kind of aims to make you feel that way, like anything could pop out and get you. It's why a movie like Halloween is still pretty spooky in 2019, even though like some of it's kind of aged. I rewatched Halloween a few weeks ago, and there's a lot of shots in that movie that are, I mean, that movie came out in I think it was the 70s, like 1978, 1979 maybe. Maybe a little bit later, early 80s. Rewatched that movie, and a lot of the shots in that movie looked like modern, like they were shot with a modern camera, but it's just a period piece, you know?
Right.
And it's remarkable. It's so cool. And Halloween, even now, does a pretty good job of making you feel like anybody could break into your home and murder you. And that's kind of, to bring the discussion back around, that's Faith actually does a good job of that. It makes you feel unsafe in front of your computer, because it feels so unnatural, you know?
The things like we talked about the first time, the intense volume, there is no like fade in for background music or for sound effects or for anything. There's nothing to ease you into that. It's all very abrupt, very loud, very garbled and distorted. Even the simple fact that I complained about it the first time, but the fact that you move so incredibly slow.
Yes.
There's no chance of you to ever outrun anything that attacks you.
No, because everything in this game moves just like terrifyingly fast.
There you have very little protection. The cone of effect your cross has is very limited.
Yeah.
It just does this great, and I think even just the simple fact of it being on a black screen.
Yeah.
That evokes that shadow imagery, the darkness, what is behind anything, you know?
Yeah, what's lurking in like the blackness of the game screen itself. Like anything could be in there waiting to pop out and grab you. There's a few moments in the game where I was like reading a note and I was like afraid to lower the note, you know, to press space or whatever to exit the note. I'm just like, oh no, there's gonna be something waiting for me. So it's that endless possibilities kind of thing. It does a really good job of replicating, funny enough, like more modern or PS2 era survival horror games, like your Silent Hills and whatnots, where you are so much more helpless versus like the stuff around you, and so by moving slower and being less effective, just that alone is enough to inspire some pretty visceral fear in some parts. It's really good.
I really also think that a lot of it is helped by emulating old visual styles like this, emulating old gameplay.
Yeah.
Because, not to sound like a bitter nostalgic person, the old thing was better, but like there is something that's like just a little bit more terrifying about a VHS tape compared to a DVD.
Sure, yeah.
An old, you know, anything that has that sort of visual or audio degradation, that sort of that's more easily corruptible.
Yeah.
That just feels feels scarier.
I completely agree. I think high fidelity graphics have kind of ruined horror video games. I can't really think of one that like really scared me.
RE7, but even
RE7 was different.
but even RE7's visuals are, you were in an old house. You're seeing a lot of
old stuff,
manual appliances.
Yeah, and VHS tapes are a big part of the plot. That's true, actually.
So it's just, it's also a thing of like Stranger Things set in the 80s, because that it just feels a bit more real, a bit more visceral to evoke that time period, I think.
Yeah.
Compared to the modern digital era.
Right.
No one's going to be scared of a DVD. People are going to be scared of a VHS tape, though.
Who knows? Maybe in 20 years they'll remake The Ring with and it's a literal ring because it's a DVD. Get it?
No one's. There's no such thing as a haunted flash drive. That's nothing.
That's actually not true, and I'll tell you why. Because if you found an unlabeled DVD or flash drive, like in a spooky place, like an abandoned building or something, and it was just unlabeled or had just something written on it hastily in Sharpie, your first reaction would be, that shit's cursed.
You're right.
So, yeah, but I still get what you mean. There's a certain aspect to analog tech that is more spooky, and it might just be unfamiliarity breeding fear. It's like it's a thing you don't see very often anymore. As technology progresses, we're seeing less and less of like old quality stuff, and so looking back to the past and seeing old stuff is it's a thing that we're not used to, and just that alone, it's putting you into a situation that's outside your comfort zone, even if it's just visually, because like that visual element signifies like, hey, you're in a different place. It's like the video equivalent of being in a new town.
Yeah, it's that like you said, the unfamiliarity. I think that's a big part of it. That like this isn't part of the world you're familiar, like you're used to.
Yeah,
it's the equivalent of the ghost in the Victorian dress. This is not part of your world anymore.
Right.
This is something that came before that.
Yeah, it's something that, existed before you were born, and that in itself can sometimes be a little weird. I don't know why. It just is. So, Faith Chapter 2, a weirdly spooky little video game that you can get Chapter 2 for free, right? I can't remember. Did I spend money on it?
I think it's like $1.
$1?
I think you can spend like $3 to get the soundtrack and get some like bonus like wallpapers and stuff.
Okay.
I also really do like, and this kind of also applies to the other game we played. I do like the idea of your faith still being a weapon in this game. I don't know if I talked about it this much last time, but like, even if you are playing like a crazy person, even if this is like all in your head, or you are not an actual ordained priest anymore or whatever, I do like that the cross is your weapon, that you are able to expel demons, you are able to perform an exorcism. The ending of this game being you and another priest are teaming up to exorcise a demon. I just think that's like a concept you don't really see in a lot of horror games.
Yeah, it is weird that we haven't seen like a high fidelity game that is basically The Exorcist, like where you play as like I can't think of anything that's like a 3D game where you play as a priest exorcising a demon, like white collar and all. And that's kind of strange because there's a lot of kind of like video game analogs to movies, because of course modern video games desperately want to be movies. Modern AAA games, that is, desperately want to be movies, but we haven't really seen anything like Mafia. The Mafia franchise is very clearly like boy, we really love the Godfather kind of game series. And like Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption and all those kind of games, they all have kind of their movie analog, but I can't think of anything that is like The Exorcist, which is weird because The Exorcist is super influential, even 40 years later. That one actually did come out in the 70s. And so, yeah, it is kind of novel and interesting, and a thing I would like to see more. Totally. Is the concept of like being an actual priest and you are expelling demons. It's like, it's kind of strange that faith is the only place to find that.
It reminds me a lot of when we did a medieval, and I thought it was notable that like you are playing a boomer shooter where you are explicitly on the side of angels.
Yeah.
You know? Like not just like the Doomslayer, who is ostensibly a good guy because he's killing the demons, but like, no, you have received a blessing from a divine being that is capital G good.
Right. The embodiment of good. In this case, you are like actually carrying something that is for real, ordained and blessed to expel the actual literal devil. So that's neat.
Yeah, I just think that's like a cool thing, and they still made that a terrifying endeavor.
Yeah, it rules. I do like the reference to, obviously they recite Psalm 91, but also the whole wherever two people are, God is, or wherever two people are and praying, God is in their midst. I'm like, that's neat. I remember that from growing up going to church. So, stuff that I just remember being from where I'm from, aka like the rural South. I'm always like, like actual for real Christian references in my video games. That doesn't happen very often, actually.
It doesn't happen very often, and it happens even less that it like, this is a good thing.
Yeah, it's a pretty, actually is, even if like you are a crazy person, the Christian elements are still posited as a force for good. It's like, that's actually kind of interesting. Doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
So
very excited to see what chapter 3 has to offer.
We'll be talking about this again.
Yeah, whenever that comes out, probably next year at this rate, if like it keeps going at this rate.
Right.
But yeah, I was really, really happy that Faith 2 came out.
Yes. It's actually spooky. And then before we transition, one other thing. You know how I keep joking, like I can find Devil May Cry in anything? Mm-hmm. The demon at the end of the game is Malphus. The demon they're mentioning to go after is Malphus, which is the bird lady from DNC 5. So, there you go. I'll find it everywhere.
So you were like, I know that name from a video game.
Thanks, video games.
That's
Devil May Cry and Faith are in the same universe. There you go.
That's literally the equivalent of like looking at a pack of tarot cards and be like, sick Persona reference, bro.
That's all I know. I don't know all the names of angels and demons. I just know what video games have taught me, alright? I don't know any of that shit. I went to a Protestant church. They don't teach us any of the cool stuff. They just teach us the boring stuff, okay? It sucks.
You see a list of the 7 deadly sins, and you're like, sick Full Metal Alchemist reference.
Or, hey, I saw that anime. Because there's just an anime called 7 Deadly Sins.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyways, we gotta move on.
Yeah.
To Worse Than Death, a game I feel a little... I don't know how I feel about this one, buddy. This was your idea.
It was. I saw this. I saw it got really good reviews. I watched a trailer for it, and I thought it looked really, really appealing. It does the thing where it combines sprite work with hand-drawn portraits that you see a lot of these modern indie games do.
Right.
And I like that aesthetic, so I thought, all right, I'll give this a shot. And then, I don't know.
It has moments where it does things super well. I think the hand-drawn art is really good. I think the pixel art is fine. I don't actually think it's, like, great. It's just like fine, you know. It gets the point across.
Compared to the such a striking aesthetic in Faith.
Yes.
This is very much the modern pixel art game that you've seen before.
Yeah.
Where the characters don't have a descript face. Mm-hmm. They kind of have a bobbing idle animation.
Yeah, it's really aggressive in this one. It's weird.
It's the animation is very fluid, but the characters themselves are not very detailed.
Yes.
There's a game that did this. That came out several years ago.
God, there's a ton of them. The one that it makes me think of, but like less aesthetically attractive compared to it, is a game that is out on Steam and has been for a few years now, called Darkside Detective.
That might be what I'm thinking of.
There's a ton of them.
Yeah, there's one in particular that I was thinking of. I got it from Lone Survivor. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, Lone Survivor is another one actually. Mm-hmm. That's on my wish list as well, I think. Yeah. But yeah, it definitely has the same look as Lone Survivor and Darkside Detective, except I think it has a really weak and really boring color palette. That's the first kind of like thing that kind of kills this game for me, is that everything is really muddy looking in the sprite work.
Which is a weird thing to complain about for a horror game, but I understand what you mean.
It's just that details kind of tend to like sink into each other. You know, pixel art is inherently because it's all blocks. You have to make sure those blocks are very different, or everything kind of like falls into each other and it kind of becomes like a visual soup. And there's a lot of places in this game that are pretty soupy to me. And then there's some stuff that actually does stand out. I mean, there are areas that are pretty good. There's stuff in the school, stuff in the sawmill, the hospital. There's like certain sequences that I'm like, yeah, this is pretty good. But in general, I do think the sprite work is pretty weak compared to like those other titles we were just talking about. And especially a lot of other modern indie pixel titles. You're seeing a lot more these days of indie pixel titles that have I guess like live lighting, like lighting that is not pixel lighting. Or
right.
It does a good job of being pixel lighting but replicating actual light. And I think that game could have been served by that. It definitely would have done a good job to create a depth of field that doesn't exist in the current game. There's a lot of 2D games out there right now that are 2D but don't feel 2D because the color palette is used in such a way that it feels very deep. This game doesn't really have that going on, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It all kind of feels very flat. This game was... I'm glad. Sometimes it's good to play video games that I just don't have like fawning love for.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
it helps you. It helps you to understand like you know what goes into making a game.
Yeah.
And how like whenever we play something that's really really good, I feel like we play something that's even really really bad, we kind of miss the middle ground a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a game that has a good example of that middle ground. It's not bad.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad game. I just don't think it meets the potential it could have had.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder how much of that is because it started off as a mobile game.
Yeah, but there's some pretty spooky, for real spooky mobile games out there. There's a really good game that I think the best friends have played back before they died. That was like a really blatant Silent Hill. It is like a 3D game. Like I can't remember what it's called right now. I'll look it up and post it on Twitter like I always do. But it's like a 3D game, like has a Silent Hill style camera and Silent Hill style controls, and it's on mobile. And everything about it is pretty damn legit. Like you play it on an iPad, and everything I've seen of it is that it's pretty legit. So I don't know if it being a mobile game is what's really hindering it. It feels like a lot of things are kind of slowing this one down. It's an unwillingness to go bold with pixel art, and an unwillingness to go really hard in the plot. I mean, I feel like There's some moments that are scary, but it's just... It kind of fizzles out. It has a terrible ending.
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad you said that.
It had a horrible ending.
I that ending was like really abrupt and
out of nowhere.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess it's over. There is the one thing I did like about the ending was the ultimate twist at the end that the horror behind it was not supernatural. Actually, it was a serial killer. Like,
it's a serial killer.
It wasn't a monster. It wasn't a beast. It was a guy.
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting twist, considering how the game is set up to be like a super... Like, you are seeing guys who are decapitated. Their chests have been ripped open.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting, but, like, the way it was presented, I was like, oh, that's just how it ends. Okay.
Yeah, I've definitely... The concept behind it, that the supernatural stuff is like a warning, and the evil is just a person, like, that's cool. The execution of it, not so much, because they just kind of drop all of it on you in a last-second exposition dump before the game ends. It's like, oh, okay. I guess this is how this game is going to end. Okay.
I feel... It really does feel like this game... It's very short. It's 2 hours long.
2 hours long, yeah.
And
for once, I'm not mad about this. Just like a side note, I hate to interrupt you. For once, not mad about it being 2 hours long because the game's only $8.
I mean, I feel I'm not mad about it being short either. Right. Like, but at the same time, I feel like they could have added. There was tons of room to fill in these gaps, and like I understand the appeal of like leaving the audience to come to their own conclusions and stuff with certain aspects of it, but like the one of the appeals of playing a horror game, a survival horror game in general, is getting the lore notes, finding the hints of existence beyond the horror you're living in. Exploring the lives of these people, of these characters. You're introduced, like, you could have spent a bit more time before the horror actually starts, getting to know some of these characters a bit more, giving the town itself a bit more depth.
Yeah.
So, because, like, what we get is not enough to make me, not to say that, like, I need to care about these characters because they exist to get murdered.
Yeah, it's like a horror movie.
But having a bit of pathos and having a bit more understanding of just like the inner workings of the town itself.
Yeah, right.
Would have gone a long way.
And just to kind of establish the town as like a place instead of a bunch of scary set pieces. Because the way it is right now, it's just like, why are there so many spooky fucking things in this town? Do normal people actually live here? Because, like, I was sure the twist was going to be that it's all in Holly's head. You know?
You texted me that. You texted me, like, is this all, like a trick? Like, is she hallucinating this? And it's weird because the game does drop a few hints. There's a few times where, like, the screen distorts, where an image will flash on the screen for just a second, but then it never follows up on that.
Yeah, it's really weird.
There are, like, a few aspects of, like, supernatural elements, like the TV displaying a haunted image, of the projectors displaying, like, these cursed, things.
Yeah.
And then never follows up on them.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't, not that you want the horror to be explained, like, no, please spoon feed me all of the spooky thing, tell me why it happened. But it needs to tie into, the direction of the story. When you think about, like, Silent Hill, or it's like, oh, the town itself is haunted, and the town itself is manipulating things to guide the protagonist to wherever it thinks they need to go.
Yeah, it's all set up and no payoff.
I always think of, like, in Downpour, there's this great bit, one of the good bits about that game, one of the few good bits, is when the dude is talking to someone who's trapped in the town, and he's like, why don't we just steal a boat and, leave? And the dude's like, yeah, if we got a key to a boat, the key wouldn't work. If we tried to get in a car, the car wouldn't start. Like, the town will trick you. Mm-hmm. It will prevent you from doing things it doesn't want you to do. And I think that's like, that I feel like this game tried to go for that, but didn't actually establish the town as some sort of supernatural location or anything.
And then did like a mundane, it was all a serial killer thing, which is fine, like you said, but there's too many like weird things in Worse Than Death that, like, why does she just end up in the hospital? Why is everything so run down?
Yeah, who brought her to the hospital? Like, why is the hospital in a shambles? Why is the library in a shambles?
Yeah. And I know they said it's because there's been flooding lately, but it seems like in that case there wouldn't be a high school reunion.
Yeah, like
it's like, okay, if you had said, like, we're going back to this town, like the town we grew up in, and like a historic flood basically came and rendered our entire hometown, where you met the love of your life and I fell in love with the love of your life, it rendered it unlivable, and we're going back to try and, I don't know, get some memento of grace to try and put all of this behind us, and then weird stuff keeps happening, like bodies of people we knew in high school. It's like, okay, there you go. That's cool. Because then you're just establishing that this is just one big, abandoned, waterlogged town. But then they do this weird thing where they're like, no, people still live here, and they still go to the bar. But, like, it just, is the school, okay, so is the school actually that run down? So why are they having a high school reunion there? You know?
The school and the bar are, like, completely untouched by all this, but then you go... The gym is completely untouched by this, but then when Flynn goes missing, and Holly goes, like, upstairs, I think, to try and hunt him down, like, the other parts of the school are super run down. So it's like, which one is it? What's going on? And none of this gets any kind of... You don't get any explanation for it. It's also unclear, like, is this recent damage? Like, they talk about the flooding. Like, okay, well, is the flooding the reason why the hospital has fallen apart? Or why the library has, like, a huge hole in the ceiling?
Yeah.
Why an entire section of it has just collapsed? Like, is that due to flooding? Because, like, beyond that, it seems like it's operational. The computers are running. There's still power. Mm-hmm. But, like, you obviously wouldn't have those buildings be open for public use if they're in that state.
Yeah. And it's like... And the thing is that if it had just been a supernatural story, like there wasn't, like, a serial killer element, like it was all supernatural stuff, then rundown, abandoned library that still somehow has power and the computers all work, that's fine. It's ghosts. It's magic. We don't gotta explain shit. But... You're doing both, and you can't really do both. Like, you can have some spooky, like, supernatural elements in your mundane serial killer story, but it's just, there's a lot in this game. There's 3 stories in this one story.
There is something to be said about a story where it's set up to seem supernatural, but then revealed to be mundane, and that it is the protagonist's perspective and thus the camera's perspective that it's an unstoppable monster, that cannot be harmed and is only pursuing you to kill you. When in all actuality, it's your fear filling in the gaps of a mundane killer or enemy or something like that.
Right.
This game does end up having both, because the killer is a normal person, but there also is a ghost.
There is a ghost. And it's like... Okay, we're going to go on another tangent real fast, so hold on here. But there's a really good Australian horror movie that came out in 2009, I think, called Lake Mungo. And I cannot recommend you watch Lake Mungo enough, because it does that. It has both. It has, like, supernatural elements, and it has mundane horror elements of just like, oh god, the real world sucks, you know? Like, it's got both going on. And some really visceral, terrifying imagery that just, you know, will make your skin crawl. Good ass movie. And it does both, but the existence of both makes sense. Like, they make logical sense. They jive together. You understand, like, why this bad thing happened to this girl. Like, the short version of it is that, of the plot, if you haven't seen Like Mungo, and this is, like, the non-spoiler version, because you should watch Like Mungo, is that a girl drowned, like, 2 years ago, and, like, on a family vacation, and this documentary crew has come in to interview the family. It's like a mockumentary kind of style movie. Interview the family about her death and the fact that her brother has been finding photos and showing, you know, like, the parents and the brother have been finding photos that have, like, the ghostly image of the dead sister in them. And it's, like, you know, it's a mockumentary about, like, maybe debunking these horror elements and trying to find out, like, what's real and what's not and why this girl actually died, and really good stuff like that is what I'm saying. And it has both, but it manages it well, just by making sure it all kind of makes logical sense. Like, there's spooky stuff, but it also takes place in, like, the real world, and that real world is like a, you know, logically consistent with 2009. Like, there's flip phones and stuff.
Right.
And it's just, like, it has both, and it works super, super well, and this game just kind of feels like it can't decide on which one it wants to be. And so it kind of flounders with both. Like, if there had been a more human element, like getting to know the people more, or if it had gone a little harder on the supernatural element, then I feel like it would have jived a little bit better. But right now, it just kind of feels like it's straddling a line, you know?
It's a thing that, like, I'm kind of coming to, like, use as a descriptor for more and more things, as, like, more media I consume. It has big first draft energy.
Yeah, totally.
It's got these elements in them, and it's ideas that, like, the writer and the game creator clearly were excited to put in their game, you know? These things that they are very enthusiastic about. They very clearly have the desire and the potential to tell a sort of pixel-based silent horror, you know, 2 hours, or Silent Hill 2-hour story about a small town and the dangers inside it. And they wanted to have some supernatural elements in it. Because that makes it easy to put in certain puzzles and you know, create atmosphere that way. But they didn't give it the second pass to make it more coherent. Yeah,
that makes perfect sense. And you can tell, especially in the dialogue, because a lot of this dialogue is really not good.
It's very, very generic.
I guess you saw me complaining on Twitter that at one point she's like, there's some sort of crystalline drug inside of these pill bottles. It's like, bitch, just say it's meth.
It's meth. That one to me strikes of, they won't let me say crystal meth on the iTunes store or like, you know what I mean? Like,
I get what you're saying, but like,
I
don't know, man.
It's still, like, so awkward.
It's so awkward. You could have found a way to get around that, surely. I don't know. You could have just said it's painkillers, you know? Or, like, he's not making drugs, he's just stealing old pain pills from the hospital and he's selling them out of the sawmill. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look, you know, you go to the cabinet and you get ibuprofen in the game. Yeah. So it's like, there's ways to get around it, because right now that kind of stuff is like, oh god, I left my notes and my purse at the office because I walked off without my purse today. I had one, like, thing where she said, god, what did she say that I was just like, normal people don't talk like that. It's exactly as I feared is a thing she says at one point, or something along those lines. And in my notes, I just had, like, that written down and underlined. I was like, nobody talks like this. Nobody on Earth talks like that. that's what happens when you don't actually have voice acting in your game.
Yeah.
Is that you don't say those things aloud and then realize like how weird it sounds.
Yeah, dear writers, please actually say your dialogue out loud, even if it's just in an empty room and you're writing your script. Like, say your dialogue out loud to realize the fact that nobody would say crystalline drugs or it's just as I feared. Like, nobody from like a little small town like this, especially this chick who is she says she's a physiotherapist. So she would especially know what meth is, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like if you've been in any kind of medical field, you know what meth is. And this game is set in the 1993 because they are the class of 1983 and this is their 10-year reunion. So this game is set in 1993. Crystal, like, meth was a thing in, like, rural America in the 1990s. Not as much as it was in the early 2000s, but it's still a thing. And, like, the other thing is when she's talking to Vanessa's sister, the reporter chick, she says, or maybe it's not Vanessa's sister, it's somebody else, but she says, I heard she's into drugs lately. And it's like, again, nobody gossiping about their classmate 10 years later would say that. They would actually say, oh, well, she's a pillhead. She's popping pills. She's doing meth. You know, it's all these little things that just make it feel like totally disingenuous, like not like real people. And then that in turn makes all these people feel like, and you're supposed to sympathize with at least Holly and Flynn.
Right.
Because they actually are, like, fleshed out people. But then you have these little moments like that where it's like,
where it just takes you away from them as as people.
Yeah, and you just become aware of the artificiality.
You know what? You also reminded me, like, there is a point where, like, she mentions, like, yeah, she's a physiotherapist. And, like, this is a thing that, like, especially if you're making a quick horror game. Like, if you're making a horror game in general, and then also, like, a quick horror game... You need to use every detail that you bring up.
Yeah.
You know? When you're giving a character a like depth like that, like giving them a career path that they pursued, that needs to come up.
Actually, it's really interesting because you say that and she mentions that she runs 3 times a week. And so I guess it's supposed to be that she can run from monsters the way she does. But her stamina bar is really small.
It's really weak and like
it's flimsy.
It doesn't like hold up that in that way. Like when you are trying to tell a story about like how an event in the past affected, you know, your characters like that, and how those details are incredibly important. Like what led up to that, and you know, you get hints and little moments where you kind of question the truth, you know, of what really happened.
Right.
You need to make sure you're using the details that you provide.
Right.
It all needs to kind of like everything in a game that's set up like this needs to ultimately serve the conclusion of the game.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because you say that, and I'm already thinking of things I had in my head as I played this game. They mentioned that she's a physiotherapist. They also mentioned that Flynn's leg is messed up from the car accident that killed Grace. So I thought, like, is it going to be that she actually kind of resents Flynn? I already knew that she was in love with Grace, by the way. I could see that one coming.
Like,
I could see that coming from a mile away.
Yeah.
They're trying to make it sound like she's in love with Flynn. I'm like, no, she's not in love with Flynn. She's in love with Grace. So I was like, so is the twist going to be that, like, she was in love with Grace and she also resents Flynn for killing, like, this girl who was her best friend and also somebody she was in love with, and that's why, like, she never came home and she never, like, helped her best friend recover from his, like, injury, because they mentioned that, you know, Flynn has a bad leg because of the car accident, so it screwed him up in a lot of ways. And it's like, oh, that would have been, like, a neat little angle. You know, it's your old Silent Hill kind of, your protagonist is a much more flawed individual than she lets on. But no, she just was in love with Grace, and that's her deep dark secret, I guess.
The injured leg never even comes up in
it's like a
way.
gameplay thing.
He moves the same speed Holly does when he's with her. He has no trouble, like, getting over obstacles.
Yeah, he climbs over them slightly slower than her, but that's it.
There's even the point where this stuck out to me when you're in the library. There's a point where you have to go downstairs and Flynn won't go with you. But the reason Flynn gives is that he's like scared or he doesn't feel comfortable going down to a dank basement when, hey, my leg doesn't work, it's hard for me to take the stairs, is literally right there.
But it's also funny too, because they mention like a few minutes before that the elevator is broken, which means Flynn has to use the stairs, and he comments like, oh, that kind of sucks. So it's like, it's right there. You have all of these like little weird like things you could connect back to your video game plot, and you didn't. Like in 2019, I know like the it's gay twist is like still a thing that happens, and it's fine if it's done well. JJ The Missing, I can't remember the full title, JJ Macfield and the Island of Memories, whatever the fuck it's called, The Missing. That it's gay twist is really good because it's basically about that. Like it's just as like the whole game is about like, you know, sexuality and gender identity and all that stuff. Like the game is like lives and dies by that, literally. This game is just kind of like at the last minute it's like, oh, she's gay, cool, thanks. I guess like, I mean, I picked up on it, but like it is weird for that to be treated as the like big secret, like the big twist is that Holly was in love with Grace too, and it's like, that was my big horrible thing I did. I didn't tell my friend. Like, okay, there's no indication that Grace loved Holly back, right?
No,
like, not really.
Like, she... See, I've always thought, like, playing this, like, I figured... Like, I don't know, I might have to go back and reread some of the notes to be clear on this, but I don't know if the game was doing this on purpose or what, but there were a lot of hints about...
Grace cheating on Flynn with Jack.
Yeah, with Jack. Like, explicitly, like, Jack was involved with them. Yeah. In some manner. Like, that was that. Like, never any mention, like, it was never ambiguous. Yeah. It was, like, they explicitly name-dropped Jack a few times, talking about... Like,
Holly explicitly says, oh my god, Grace was involved with Jack right before she got engaged to Flynn.
And so, like, that wouldn't, like, to have that suddenly drop that Holly was in love with Grace, like, again, it feels like they didn't give this the once-over to make this all unified and coherent.
And the thing is, too, it's like, to posit, like, Holly being in love with Grace as, like, her big secret, the thing is, if your friend has never shown any, like, romantic affection towards you, and that friend is now engaged to another person who they are romantically interested in, even if, I mean, okay, Grace may have cheated on Flynn with Jack. It's, like you said, it's like, feels kind of ambiguous. So, like, but ostensibly Grace was in love with Flynn, and they were gonna get married, and Flynn loved her dearly, and blah, blah, blah. If that is the case, if that is, like, the actual truth, you don't tell your best friend's girlfriend that you're, like, in love with her.
Yeah, like I'm sorry, that sucks, but you missed your chance.
You missed your chance, and if you tell someone that, you have, like, forever made your life awkward forever. It's not like I'm asking you to stay in the closet. I'm saying... don't do that to your friends when they're about to get married, you know?
It sucks. And that, like, that can build to, like, some kind of resentment on your end, but that's on you to get over.
Let go of. Yeah, that's like any time, like, a dude complains that his female friend stuck him in the friend zone. Like, that's a thing for you to navigate on your own, buddy, because like you were friends with that chick and you wanted to be a relationship, and it's the same thing. Like, it's the exact same thing. You don't get to, like, say, like, oh, my big dark secret was that I was in love with my friend and I never told her. She was engaged. It should have stayed a secret, you know? Maybe, like, years later, when you've moved on from her and her and Flynn have been happily married. Obviously, that didn't happen, but, her and Flynn have been happily married for however many years, or maybe they got divorced, who knows? Then you tell her and be like, oh, I was super in love with you. And it's like, haha, that's funny. I'm so glad we've moved on from it. I'm glad you didn't tell me that and make my relationship with you and my husband awkward for the rest of my life. Holly, thanks. It's just like, man.
And
it's a bad twist. Being like, I was in love with Grace. It sucks.
The other thing about it is that, like, she wrote the letter. Mm-hmm. And then it's revealed that they never read it.
Yeah.
So, like, it was all for nothing anyway.
Yeah.
So, like,
so how is that, like, it's just, like,
it didn't,
I don't
like,
know.
It ended up not mattering.
I hate to say this, but sometimes it does feel a bit like pandering. It's like, we're an indie game. That means it's gotta have a gay lady in it. And it's like, I don't know. Maybe it isn't pandering, but in this case, it sure as hell feels like it, because it's just like such like a non-issue to the plot, really. It
feels like adjacent to it.
Yeah.
Especially like you brought up The Missing, where, like I said earlier, everything in The Missing is ultimately serving towards the conclusion of that game and the reveal at the end of that game. Mm-hmm. And unlike. So in this one, like you and I both were like, oh, she was in love with Grace. Like we figured that out just like right away. Whereas The Missing, it still feels much more like an ultimate twist at the end. Mm-hmm. Even though in hindsight, it's like, oh yeah, everything,
it's super obvious
all of her conversations with her friends are all aiming towards that, and that's like the difference between setup for like a good twist and a bad twist.
Yeah.
Where the things only become obvious in hindsight.
Right.
So when you have like awkward conversations between Holly and Flynn where she's like, "Oh yeah, I have something to tell you," and about the love that you had and died, and it's like, "Oh, okay, I see where this is going."
Yeah. Would have been a better twist if it had been, like, And if you want to go full, like, this game is attempting to do some kind of Silent Hill thing, like, the twist is, Grace cheated on Flynn with Holly.
Yeah, that would have been,
that would have been a hell of an actual plot twist.
The thing about horror protagonists is that you can make them be bad people.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of like one of the tenets of like a survival horror game, is that, like, especially one that tries to go psychological, compared to like a Resident Evil or something, but like one that does try to dive into the psyche, is that like you are like allowed and almost required to make your protagonist be a bad person.
Otherwise, there just doesn't seem to be like a lot of depth to Holly. Mm-hmm. She just kind of is like scared, I guess, and she's sad that her friend died, and she's sad that Flynn's sad. It's like,
if it was, your fiance cheated on you with me and then died.
Yeah. Hey, that's a lot of guilt I'm carrying around. I've been hanging on to this for 2 years, and I gotta get it off my chest,
It feels like, it feels like they didn't want to commit fully to the horror thing.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought about that the more I played it, considering that, like, the game over animation is just a quick reaction of Holly being scared, and then you flash back to your last save point.
Right.
There is no, like, consequence shot of the game over. It ends with a reconciliation, which is not a bad thing. I mean...
Yeah, happy endings in horror stories are fine.
But this one just didn't feel earned, because, again, like, Holly didn't really struggle with anything that had weight or significance. And also, it's kind of hard to have a happy ending when an entire high school was murdered.
Yeah, they literally just say, boy, it's been a few weeks, but things have already gotten back to normal. Like, it's like, what do you mean back to normal? There's probably still body parts in that hospital. A man was shoved into a sawmill blade.
Like an entire graduation party was mercilessly slaughtered and butchered, and you're just like, all right, well, but we made up.
we made up and I'm going back to the big city now, but before I go, I gotta tell you that I was in love with your dead fiancé. Bye, Flynn! Have a nice life! Like, no, you're not gonna do that.
Now that we've buried our graduating class, I'm gay.
It's like, cool, that's fine. Feel like there's a lot of other more messed up stuff going on right now. You know? It's like, I don't know, man. It just feels so weird. The ending of this game is so weird. Especially because it ends in a big explosion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like, the whole thing is just like, Grace the ghost blew herself up. Okay, what? Excuse me? Okay.
Yeah, I don't... And, you know, and the thing about this is that we've been complaining so much about the plot. I do want to say they were pretty good at designing puzzles.
The puzzles in this game are great. Like, that's the best part of this game.
They did a really good job of pacing out, like, where you find your hints, or like, oh, where's the key? Well, it's in here, and like it's a good distance where it's a challenge to get there, but not like, oh god, I have to go all the way back down here.
Right.
You're finding. I liked the one in the sawmill about the robins and the sparrows.
Yeah, that's a good one.
There were a lot of good, like, I actually took photos of my TV.
Yeah, anytime I have to take notes in a video game, I'm definitely like happy. And the fact that it's like increasing in complexity. So like your first puzzle is very simple, but then when you go back to the high school and you have to navigate the whole high school and collect all the slides and all this other stuff, it's like increasing in complexity and danger as you go. That's really cool, you know? That's how you want it to be.
The boiler puzzle, setting the boilers to the correct temperature based on east and west, I thought that was really good. There was the one in the hospital to turn the power back on, where you have to flip the breakers to calculate like certain amount. Like, I thought that was really good.
Yeah.
You know, so like there's all these like really, really good like puzzles and stuff. The one in the mausoleum about like, tell me the story of my love life.
And you have to get it from the different urns. Yeah, that's a really nice one. I like those. I like them because it kind of goes back to a thing we've seen in a lot of games lately of like in like weird examples, RE2 and Stories Untold. The idea of interacting in a tactile way with things, and it's obviously that this game was made for mobile, and like there's a lot of interacting, you know, moving things, pulling things out of pockets. It all feels very like a pop-up book, but as a video game, but in a really cool way. So you're flipping switches and you're moving papers and you're cleaning things out of a room, so you actually feel like you're really interacting with this environment, and I like that stuff a lot. And that was like that design stuff was some of the most interesting aspects of the game. It's just the other stuff.
Yeah, it's just that like the writing just wasn't on par with the actual game itself.
Also, I just hate the only game that's ever done this well is Detention. That oh boy, I think it's Taiwan. I'm sorry, it might be. I think it's Taiwan. That Taiwanese horror game that the best friends played once. It's really good. You're in like a school. Hey, look at that. You're also in a school, and like there's ghosts and stuff, and there's you and another boy. Hey, wait a second.
Hey, wait.
Wait just a goddamn minute. But yeah, Detention is really good, and it does the whole hiding from ghosts thing. And it's the only game that's ever done it well and actually made it scary. This game, it's just a chore.
Yeah, this one, it's very easy, and so it just becomes an annoyance.
Yeah.
To get past them.
You just hang out in a locker until they walk away.
Yeah, until your meter goes down. If there were more variety in the hiding segments, I think actually, I don't know for sure, but it feels like that if you were playing on a higher difficulty, the thing would pursue you more aggressively.
Maybe.
Because there are a lot of areas where you can hide, and I'm like, I don't know how the monster would get to these areas.
Yeah. So.
Because there are points where, like, if the monster does see you and you manage to get to a room, you have to hide in that room.
Yes.
To, you know, when it comes in, and then it'll go back out. But like, there are certain points where I'm like, he didn't show up here at all.
Yeah, I guess that could be it. Or it could be like a way to make you uncertain of like, oh, well, the monster could pop in here at some point. Like, I could come back and there could be a monster in, you know?
Right.
But either way, I just think it's like the most bog standard kind of indie game horror. A lot of them do it. The two tropes of your horror indie game is you got a flashlight that needs batteries, which always sucks, and you gotta hide from an invincible thing that also always sucks. Those both suck, and this game has one of them. And it's like, I was really expecting from like early in the game, like with the ability to jump over stuff, I thought there would be like a cool like a better, cooler chase sequence. Like an extended chase sequence. I thought that would have been cool.
Yeah.
To just have to run and, like, manage your like, you have such a small stamina bar, so you're, like, running, and you have to slow down sometimes to let your character breathe, but that means that thing gets closer to you, and so there's a bit of, like, push and pull. This game could have had, like, one or two of those, and that would have really heightened the tension and made you feel more capable as well.
Like, but, like, and as it stands right now, the jumping over things is pointless.
Yeah,
there is
totally useless.
They don't serve as any sort of obstacle.
And it doesn't even, because it doesn't slow the thing down, does it?
No, it goes right through them, and, like, it only really serves, like, there are points where you have to jump over, like, a ledge or something in the game where the monster's nowhere near. It's just there to make you press the R2 button.
Yeah, it's weird.
Also, like, one final thing, like, what was the monster supposed to look like? What did, like...
I can't tell. I saw a heart in there.
It's got, like, a heart shape, but is it, like, a moth? Is it, like, a big, like, are those wings?
Know.
Or, like...
I couldn't tell. It's really hard to tell what the hell that thing is supposed to be. Yeah, it's like a heart, and they established that Grace liked hearts a lot. She has, like, a heart-shaped sticker, and a heart-shaped key, and a heart-shaped necklace, and blah, blah, blah.
Because, like the twist is supposed to be that it's that thing is Grace, and it's guiding Holly to her goal, right?
So
like,
then why does it chase her around?
Yeah, like, why does that give you a game over? Why does that, like... I don't understand... like, how that's supposed to actually work.
Yeah, I'm not understanding how it's supposed to make Grace into, like a benevolent spirit instead of a malicious spirit. Because there's also a sequence at the very end, and it stuck out because it's the only time it did it, and it's one of the truly genuine times I felt unnerved by this video game. When you go back to... This is so specific. When you go back to the high school, and the first time you jump over something... there is a 2-frame flash of like what I think is supposed to be Grace's corpse. I need to go back and like watch it on YouTube and slow it down. But I think it's supposed to be Grace's corpse because it looks like a spooky thing. And it never happens again. There are no other like subliminal, like a flash that small qualifies as a subliminal image. There's no other, that I can recall anyways, subliminal imagery in this game. And usually the connotation with subliminal imaging is a negative one. Like the language of film and TV and video games in general is that like a 1-frame thing spliced into your experience is generally supposed to represent a negative thing because it's meant to unnerve you. It's meant to happen like so quickly that you go, wait, did that just happen? And then that instantly puts you on edge for something else to get you. And because it's like a creepy image of Grace and not like a fond image of Grace or anything like that, you get the notion that this is like a malevolent thing, but then again, it's like, nope, never mind. It's actually her dad that's a malevolent thing. Oh, okay.
And like, and like, see, the reason why that doesn't work also is because it's, like you said, it's the only time that happens, which means we are not given the rule of threes with it.
Yeah. Which
is, first time is, what the hell was that? The second time is, oh, I kind of understand what that is now. And the third time is the conclusion of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we're not prepared for it. We don't know what we're looking at.
This game is all set up, no payoff, like I said earlier.
It's not clear what that subliminal flash is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Which means we're never supposed to go, oh, it's Grace.
Yeah.
Because we don't see it again.
Yeah, we can't parse it, especially because it happens at the end of the game. We have no ability to process it. It's like, oh, this thing flashed. Oh my god, Flynn, he's trapped in the gym with a thing, with a horrible monster. So you have no time to, like, sit down and, like process this spooky thing that just happened. You just have to keep playing the video game, and then it never happens again. And that's the last area of the game. And it's like, how am I supposed to be feeling right now, game?
Yeah.
What do you want from me?
This game does a bad job of, like, telling me how I'm supposed to feel.
Yeah. Or I guess even more succinctly is, like, telegraphing, like, the emotion of the scene. Like, I don't know. It's weird. This game is weird. It has some neat stuff in it, but not enough neat stuff for me to say I recommend it. And it's weird that it has such good reviews.
The puzzles are great, but the story bogs it down. Yeah, play detention. The story bogs it down so much that, like, it's really not worth your time.
Yeah, actually do play detention instead, because that game is also about being trapped in a school with a male friend. And it's about, like, an affair and a family falling apart and ghosts and feeling guilty for not having done something in the past. Huh.
How about that?
Huh. Just play Detention instead. That company deserves it way better, because their other game, Devotion, got taken down because the Chinese are,
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they snuck in a Winnie the Pooh reference, so,
So that's that.
So now nobody can play Devotion, which sucks, because Devotion is really good from what I've seen on YouTube. So maybe we'll play Detention someday, because that's an actual good video game, and much better than this fucking thing. So, yeah, play Faith. It's free, or at least it's like $1. Play Faith 1 and 2.
Faith is really, really fucking good. It is probably one of the best horror games I've ever played. And I'm really excited to see where that one goes.
I'm excited for Chapter 3 and whatever else the developer makes. Airdorf is the developer for that. What is worse? Who makes Worse Than Death? Who makes worse? I don't know. So I'm, like, looking at their Benjamin Rivers. Yeah, that's the guy who makes it. It's like, better luck next time, buddy.
Yeah. Okay, one final thing, just as a quick aside.
Yeah.
Why did the game open with that weird, like, rock pop song?
I think it's supposed to establish that this is, like, a horror movie, because it's supposed to be like a slasher movie, So it has, like, a cheesy, like, pop rock song, but, like, it's not good.
No. And
it's not a very good song.
Silent Hill 3 did that too, but Silent Hill 3 is a good game.
Silent Hill 3 is a good game, and that song is sung by Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, who's, like, an actual good singer. So, play Silent Hill 3 instead if you can find it.
Yeah.
Just play Silent Hill and Faith and any other, like, good actual spooky video games, but not this one. Don't play Worse Than Death. Don't play Worse Than Death. So
I think that's about it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you to Visager for use of background music. You can follow me on Twitter at thegorgepodcast. You can follow Sara at radioinactivity. You can email us at thegorgepodcast@gmail.com. And again, our Ko-fi is ko-fi.com/thegorge. It would really help us out if you could give us some money. If you like the podcast, you like what we do, it'll help us be able to stream more often, be able to play games more efficiently and stuff like that.
Play more bad video games.
Yeah. Actually, we are streaming this Thursday.
We don't know what yet, but...
No, but we'll figure it out.
It'll be spooky.
Yes, it will. And if you want, I'm going to be posting it soon on the YouTube page. We did RE2 recently, so I have the footage for that. And then you did Goose Game. I'm going to put that up soon, too.
Cool.
So, and then if you also want to hear Sara do other stuff, you want to hear her play other games that she played Goose Game with, you can listen to her other podcast.
Ben, you had the setup in Worse Than Death, and you didn't take it. Hey, if you want to listen to me and my friends do like play gay main characters that aren't insufferable, you should come listen to me and my other podcast, Big Gay Nerds, where me and a bunch of cool queer friends get together and we play tabletop games. We try out lots of different systems. We have a lot of fun. Right now we're playing Pig Smoke, the Powered by the Apocalypse system, where you play as professors at America's foremost magical university. It's awesome. I love that game. You should come check us out at Big Gay Nerds on SoundCloud, and you can find the links to the rest of our social media from there. Thanks!
Now, Sarah, are you really telling me that your gay characters are not insufferable?
I mean,
you're playing Pig Smoke.
Are...
You just said you're playing Pig Smoke.
Okay, well, some of them are, but I think Simone in Pig Smoke is a wonderful girl, and she is the close. Are you okay? Excuse me. Rewind. Run that back for me, DJ. Because Simone, I've told you before, is the closest to my energy. So are you insinuating that I am insufferable, Benjamin?
I'm not saying that specific character is insufferable.
I see how this is. The podcast is canceled. We're not doing The Gorge anymore. It's all over, folks.
But I'm saying some of the games you play, you have to be insufferable by design.
That's true. But I'm still going to take my revenge on you by making you play DMC2 with me on stream. All right.
Well, that'll do it for us. What do you got?
What do I got? You know what? It's the season to spook, and All Hallows Eve exists for a very specific reason, and that reason is fuck the devil.
Fuck the devil.
Fuck the devil. We don't like him around here. That's what All Hallows Eve is to expel evil spirits. So yeah, we're saying that here. We say it now.
That's our most controversial take ever. You know Lucifer? Fuck that guy.
Fuck that guy. He's a huge asshole. He owes me money.
We need to cancel Satan. He's problematic.
Spill the tea, sis, about the devil. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.